following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and very pleased to welcome to the show tonight someone who's not from Oshkosh. She's from Madison. This is Barb Bolan, and you are the Executive Director of WYOU Community Television in Madison.
That's correct.
Well, thanks for being here. Now, the reason that we're having Barb here tonight, she's on a mission to save this community television station down there. You know, Governor Doyle has done some things with the budget, and that has affected budgets for all the community television and radio stations across the state, the PEG access stations, if you will. And, you know, I guess what you're trying to do is keep your station from becoming nothing more than a memory, really.
That's right, that's right. The station actually has been around since the late 70s in the city of Madison, and it's had its ups and downs over all the years, but certainly now it's been even more critical. In fact, it's so critical that we could be going off the air as early as May of next year, based on the combination of the funding problems that were created by Act 42 when it was passed at the end of 2007, and as well, more closer to home, I guess, or closer to home, we currently are struggling with the city of Madison to be awarded at least the same amount of PEG funding money that we have in previous years for this final year coming up of PEG money. Okay. The mayor just published his budget a couple days ago, and he's cut our funding 50%. And unfortunately, the funding that we have been getting over the years from PEG has represented about 85% of the station's operating budget. Sure. So when a critical piece of funding becomes jeopardized like that, then it spells the death knell, I guess, for the station.
Absolutely.
I'm not, I think that it would have been helpful if the station over the years had worked, and I'm sure they worked, but I think that we'd be in a better position if we had not had reached this point where so much of the station's operating money was dependent upon that source.
Sure.
I mean, so in the past year since I've been with the station, I've been working hard to try to diversify or create new revenue streams that will mitigate big funding losses like this.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into all those kinds of specifics, but I wanted to mention to the audience, people at home watching this may be thinking, okay, this is a community-based television in Madison. What does that have to do with us here? And I guess one of the reasons that I wanted to have Barb on tonight was because while there's nothing imminent in our future for City Cable 2 or Channel 10, we still have the same kinds of budgetary problems that any station across the state would have, and you never know. I mean, look what we've seen happen with major companies in this country that we thought would never go under and or have any kinds of financial difficulties. So, you know, what you're dealing with there, while it's your problem right now, it could easily be our problem or someone else's problem down the road. And that's why this is so important, that we kind of, you know, get this message out. And so that's why I've invited Barb here tonight, and we're very grateful for you to have made the trip up from Madison. So, so before we get into all the specifics, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you came to be the executive director of WU. We'll call it WU since those are the call letters, basically. So.
I got to Madison in April of last year after having spent 30 years of my life in Southern California. I came from the record business, actually. I've been in the music business all my professional career. And that was doing sales, marketing, and then general managership level for record labels.
No singing, right?
I actually was a singer.
Okay, but you're not going to perform for us
I'm
tonight,
not performing now, although you never know when I could break out in song.
You might break out in song, huh?
Exactly. But anyway, you mentioned you know, businesses changing significantly. Yeah. Well, the record business has been changing dramatically over the past 6-7 years now, and as the digital age has arrived, or as it arrived, the paradigm shifted on the way people bought music. Not only bought music, but whether or not they felt that it had enough of a value to even purchase. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the bottom continues to fall out of the record business. So the career that I developed there for all those years and had many wonderful experiences with started to appear to be no longer a career for the future. So I decided to make a big change and come to the Midwest. I'm not originally from Wisconsin. I'm originally from Michigan. Okay. But besides many things, I have family in Wisconsin, so in Madison. So I started looking for opportunities that would make me close to entertainment and close to music, because that's where my passion lies. Yeah. But I also was interested at this stage of my life to give back as much as I can to the community. So I was thinking, entertainment, nonprofit. How could I manage to mix these two? And lo and behold, all of a sudden, there was a Craigslist listing for an executive director position at WYOU Community Television. And I thought, that's interesting. Entertainment, nonprofit. That could be interesting. I think maybe I should check that out. Mm-hmm. So that's the history. And a year ago on October 14th, I started as the executive director at the station. Wow,
so as this show airs, it'll be right around your first anniversary of starting to work
Happy
here.
anniversary.
So congratulations, and look what you're dealing with already,
Exactly.
you know? Although you've probably been dealing with this right from the start.
Yes, I
of
mean,
your employment.
frankly, probably if I knew then what I know now, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned about the PEG funding that was cut. How large of a staff do you have?
We have 3 full-time staff and 2 people who provide hourly support to us.
Okay, all right.
And that's the long and short of it. I'm the executive director. I have a technical director who also is the creative director of the station, and I have an education director who also is the man behind all the programming, all the tremendous programming that gets done. Scheduling, I should say, of the programs.
Sure.
But that's pretty much it. And then a couple of support people, as I mentioned, someone who comes in to help us do Scala and put up community board announcements, and somebody who helps us keep the station tidy. Okay. But that's it.
Okay. Now, you know, here we have Dean, who heads up, you know, he's your equivalent here, and then I think there's 3 full-time employees here. I don't know if they have any part-timers here. I think they just have 3 full-timers. How does, and before we started taping this, you spent part of the day today with Dean,
right.
kind of, you know, taking a tour of the facility here and so
right.
forth. How, just generally or briefly, Barb, how does the facility here compare with yours in Madison?
Well, one incredibly important difference to note right here is that your station is in your community center actually houses both the government channel and public access together. Our station in Madison, WYOU, is public access only. The government channel, which is City Channel, operates entirely separately. They're housed in the government building, much like you guys are here. But they're separate, a separate entity altogether.
So they have a separate budget and
Separate
everything.
budget, separate
Wow.
everything, separate staff, separate budget. We operate in entirely different worlds, frankly. And however, part of my interest, and a lot of my interest to come today to Oshkosh, was I had met Dean and Andy at the WAPC conference, Wisconsin Association of Peg Channels conference. It took place in May of this year. It was the first time I went to an association meeting of any sort like that. And I'm a sponge right now because this is new business, a new type of industry for me. And I found it quite fascinating that as I looked around the tables there over the couple of days, that there were, I saw that PEG channels could operate in many different ways, besides how I'd seen them, and I see them operating in Madison, which is as separate fiefdoms, basically, as separate entities.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, now, interesting. If there's evidence of successful PEG channels that operate either with all three prongs of PEG, public, education, and government, under one roof, or several of them together under one roof, it seems to stand to reason that there might be benefit, significant benefit, to trying to look at ways where it's happening successfully elsewhere that we might try to model in the city of Madison. Now, that's a really simplistic way of talking about it. Obviously, the conditions and the circumstances are very complex. Madison's a big city, and it's been a long culture and a long history of the channels all operating separately. So, but still, when we're talking theoretical, I think it's important to look at examples where PEG channels can operate well together and cooperatively in one entity, and successfully, keeping, having the funding to keep it going. So.
Well, and especially in an age when budgets are continuing to shrink, funding is drying up in a lot of cases.
Right.
And here, as you mentioned, they're not only running two different community access stations, but a public access or community-based radio station too.
Right, exactly.
And still doing it with essentially the same level of staff that you have for one tine on the fork, if you will.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, and when everybody's talking about, collaborative efforts and, trying to join forces, that would be a wonderful thing maybe to look at.
It only makes sense to imagine a city of Madison with a community media center that does provide for the important needs that the community has to see what's going on in their city government and have view of that, but also have opportunity for members of the community who have a passion or an interest or a message to send to have access to television airwaves to, share that.
Sure. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What is your annual operating budget for WYOU?
The 2009 annual operating budget is just about $200,000.
Okay. And how much of that comes from, PEG money, if you will?
The PEG funding is $140,000 of that figure, and the rest of it we make up. We try to make up with. We have a combination of membership fees. We teach classes too. We also teach editing and camera classes regularly. Okay. I've started a new area of revenue stream I'm calling Media Services for Hire, where I'm using both the staffing and the facilities and the equipment that we have and providing them in scenarios where either nonprofits or other kinds of organizations or individuals have need for the media services, but aren't specifically going to create something that speaks to the mission of the station, which is to provide programming. So I categorize that in the media services for hire, and I have a rate sheet, and I've been experimenting with that this year, and it's clear to me already that even with a little bit of experimentation that we've done, that it's a potent possibility for creating a better revenue stream. We're doing fundraisers. We're doing on-air fundraisers. In fact, we have a new on-air fundraiser coming up, which we're calling Sustaining Your Voice. It's the fall membership drive, and it's taking place October 18th through the 25th. And of course, during that time, we will be asking people to call in and make pledges and become members of the station. Membership, in a lot of ways, is almost synonymous with making donations to the station, but we'll be asking for that. And in return, we're going to be ramping up to provide a lot of special programming during that week of that 8 days of pledge drive to thank them for and actually inviting them to get involved in the station. So there's those kinds of fundraisers. There's also fundraisers we're doing out in the community. So those are examples.
Sure.
And of course, we are also working our other kinds of one-on-one individual donor relationships. I'm new to that. I'm newer to that. Yeah. So that's, it's not, I don't know if anybody said it was going to be easy, but I'm here to tell you that it isn't that easy.
Well, you don't seem any worse for the wear. Not
you.
yet anyway, but you're just
you.
at the beginning of this, aren't you?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, it's a long road to hoe, I see.
Yeah.
Now, so this fundraising that you're going to be doing on camera, it's much like probably the, I'll call it a telethon, if you will, for lack of a better word, much like we see with the public radio and public TV channels.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, we'll have the things that we'll do to make it special, of course, we're asking a number of our volunteer producer members who produce shows to come in and do their shows live, where we have some music performers, some dance troupes coming in to do live. So we're committing that from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday of that week, and then starting at 1 o'clock on the weekends up through 10 o'clock, that all the shows back-to-back will be live. And we'll be there working like crazy to make it exciting, make it fun, make it feel, well, not just feel, but it is live. And during that, we'll have two different half-hour segments in there during the day where we'll do sort of our pledge wrap thing, where it'll be me and my education director, Robert. We decided we did well enough during the winter pledge drive that we thought, okay, what the heck, we're getting in front of the camera and off we go again. Yeah. And so we will, actively, pitch pitch, ask, cajole, invite.
You might even sing if someone makes a big enough donation,
You know
right?
what? I didn't think about that, but I might even sing.
See? Now, just speaking of that, before we started taping, we were talking a little bit about your background. You've worked with some pretty impressive people. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, you worked with the Go-Go's in the 80s.
I did. I've been very fortunate in my career to have worked with a lot of wonderful artists. My position was at record label level, so I was always working to help promote their record albums and their recordings. But of course, it's all part of artist development. So tours, media appearances, all those things are all part of, creating the energy and the interest and the attention to a record release so that people go out and buy the record. So I've had a great opportunity to get to be with, I worked with REM and the Go-Go's, Lords of the New Church, wonderful bands during the IRS days. But at Virgin Records, I also worked with very high profile acts, Janet Jackson, Lenny Kravitz, the Rolling Stones, acts of that nature, and then a little later working with really vintage acts. Blondie, I worked with Blondie on a reunion album. Motley Crue, Meatloaf,
Wow.
Lots of great
It's too bad
artists.
you can't draw upon some of that talent and those former relationships, to help you out with your fundraising.
You know, you're not the first person to mention that. In fact, I've had a few people, pushing me. But that's a very, I'm very protective of that. You don't play that card until it's the right card, and you know you've got the right card.
Yeah.
So when the time comes, when it's really right, I will make an effort to reach into my relationships. But I will only do that when I know that the station it's not last-ditch effort for the station, but it's part of the new WYOU and the roll into the future.
Okay. You touched on this before, and I read this comment also in a news release or an article that you had done, I think for the Cap Times in Madison, where, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't remember it exactly, but basically what you were saying is that the PEG funding it's sort of a benefit, and yet it's a disadvantage at the same time, and you were talking about how the station has sort of come to rely on it, and not necessarily, but maybe has rested on its laurels a little bit because that funding was always there. And now that it's going away, and maybe drying up altogether over a period of time, it's kind of make or break time now. And now you have to start getting creative with how you raise funds.
Yes. I think that a healthy organization should never be in a position where more than about 35% of its revenue stream comes from one source, particularly in a nonprofit kind of organizational structure. And I do think that, it's unfortunate that WYU finds itself at this critical moment, after many years, still being in the position where so much of its ability to operate comes from that one source. I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy. Of course, if it was easy, it would have been done a long time ago. But I think that for the health of any organization, and certainly for WYOU that has a future, my effort, my focus, and my board's focus will be to keep working towards making the station diversely funded rather than solely funded.
Okay. One of the things that we've got here in the way of a little graphic or some information that we can put up is your station's website, and I don't know if it's been put up throughout the show so far, but it is www.wyou.org, and I realize that we live in Oshkosh and the surrounding area. Barb's station and facility is in Madison, but I did read something on a website somewhere, and maybe it was the Cap Times, I'm not sure, but there were people who were saying that even though they didn't live in your area, they were planning on donating because they understand the importance of what you're doing, and ultimately they're looking at the bigger picture too, I think.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a little or a lot. Every little bit helps.
That's so true. That's so true.
And if people are so inclined to make a donation, I mean, if they just want to find out more about your station, they can go to the website, and I'm sure we'll be putting it up during the next few minutes while you're still on the air with us here. But also, there's a way for them to donate by going to the website as well.
That's correct.
So.
There's a donate button right there that then takes you to the donate page.
Okay.
And the front page, the home page currently has information about our upcoming pledge drive, and there'll be more information going up, daily.
Sure.
And we'll also, during the course of the pledge drive, we'll be working to bring you photos and exciting bits of information just as it happens.
Sure.
So the blog will be alive with activity, and we'll also be shooting up little clips up to YouTube, so people will you know,
Okay.
be able to see what we've got going on. But I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come
absolutely,
here. And,
sure.
and also, anybody who is watching your show and is interested to check out our station, please look at our website, and you know, we certainly would love to have you become a member, you know, or certainly a supporter.
That's right. Now, I'm curious about this because, you know, you mentioned before that, you know, the two stations are separate and they're housed separately and they have separate budgets. Are you then a city employee or no?
Oh, no, I'm not
You're
a city
not.
employee.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
all right.
Nope.
So unlike here, where the employees here are city employees, you're not.
No,
So-
no, we're not. We're employees of WYOU, and we answer to. I answer to a 9-person board.
Okay.
And we have 9 people, and then of course there are 4 officers on that board. And that's how we operate. We have, our money is housed in accounts that, I can access, but of course always transparent with the board and transparent to our membership, of course, as well.
Sure,
No, we're hanging by the our threads by ourselves.
Sure. So what kind of programming do you have there? I mean, here ours run the gamut. So what?
We have the gamut as well. I mean, I would like to say first that we program our station 24/7. So we have programs that are airing 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We do have a little community calendar, which is the little slate of information that runs for a half hour each day during the week. But the rest of the time is our programs that come primarily from producer members right in the local area. And they are all kinds of things. There's cooking shows, there's shows about, there's beautiful Capital City Band shows, there's shows about art. There are some faith-based programs. There is a wonderful new show that we've just started called Smart Transit, which is about transportation issues in the city of Madison. We have a great improv theater group that comes on and does a live thing, live improv. And I would like to mention that too. We do have about 7 programs that are live, that come in every week into the studio and do live programs. So there's lots of things to offer. We also have been out all summer long at all the free music festivals, and we've captured a lot of music footage. We've bought a new show called Here in Madison, HEAR in Madison, and we're using that as the sort of umbrella in which to place the some of that great footage of bands that have performed throughout the summer in live settings.
Well, that's impressive that you're able to do live shows, especially with a 3-person staff.
Yeah. Well, I would say, it happens to a great degree because we have a very dedicated staff. Our technical director seems like he sleeps there, but we also work to try to keep helping our producer members continue to grow in their own education about how to work their own programs, and ultimately bring in their own staff of volunteers. The mission, the goal is to get each producer to the point where they don't need us in order to run their show. And there are wonderful examples where it happens very, very well.
Okay, excellent. Well, best of luck with your upcoming pledge drive, your other fundraising efforts.
Thank you.
It sounds like you're coming up with some really creative ways to get the money stream going, and
Yes.
we wish you well with that. So
Thank you. Thank you,
again,
Cheryl.
feel free to check this out on the web. It's www.wyoU.org, and you can donate through that website if you're so inclined. So thank you very much for being here. We appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Cheryl.
We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by County Executive Mark Harris. We'll be right back.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah, right?
Welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh, and as promised, we're joined now by Winnebago County Executive Mark Harris, and Mark is an old pro at sitting here in this on this set, and so we welcome you back again. Thanks for being here. Had you here tonight because right here in front of you sits the 2010 budget, and it is that time of year again. So you've even got little Post-it notes here. So I guess
Just a couple in case I have to flip back to refresh
Yeah.
my memory.
Well, so how's the budget looking? I mean, let's just
it's-
get right into the thick of it.
I'm proposing a balanced budget. It's actually about $6 million smaller than the prior year, although the levy will actually be up about 2.7%.
Okay, so tell us how that works.
Yeah, it's kind of quirky, but one of the major changes we're going through right now is that we're instituting family care. And that's the services for the frail elderly and the adult developmentally disabled will no longer be done directly through the Human Service Department. They'll be done through a separate not-for-profit that'll be managed by a 9-member board, 3 members appointed from each of the 3 counties that participate, Manitowoc, Fond du Lac, and Winnebago. And the reason our budget goes down so much is both the expenses related to those services and the income that would come in the form of vouchers from the state will both be outside of our budget and will now go to that separate independent not-for-profit care district.
Okay.
So that's why the budget gets smaller. It's probably not such a substantive change. What the real change is for the taxpayers is that over time it'll reduce our levy costs in that area by about $4 million per year. And that phases in gradually. Initially $1 million, and then 2, and then 3. In the 4th year it's $4 million and $4 million each year thereafter. So it is a significant savings. It does represent a transfer of responsibility to this independent care district that's funded on a per capita basis by the state. In other words, they'll get a certain amount of money per client served. I think they actually fall into 2 categories, a high level and a lower level. And that's what they'll have to operate with, covering both their overhead costs and providing those benefits.
Okay.
The state had dictated that everybody switch over by 2013. Oftentimes they're forgiving if people don't meet their deadlines, but there was an opportunity for us to pair up with Fond du Lac, who had already been operating a 1-county care district.
Yeah.
And they had significant reserves and had the experience, and it was just the right time to go into a care district. And as it turns out, with the financial situation today, it's really good that the county was moving in that direction. Now, the real test of it is going to be whether it gives the same high-quality care to those individuals receiving services that Winnebago County was known for all these years.
So if somebody, I know we're getting away from the budget here a little bit with this question, but if someone, their family composition is such that they need that kind of care, is that going to be, who would they contact then for that, Mark? Would they contact like Winnebago County Social Services? And,
Sure.
And then it gets routed?
The initial contacts will still be through the county. And
Okay.
actually, with state funding, we're creating a new area, which is called an ADRC. It stands for Age and Disability Resource Center. So we will have a staff of people, and these people will consult with the elderly on what services are available, and they'll help direct people to services either within this care district or in other services within the county's Human Service Department, or even help people kind of get lined up with other services that might be available in the community
Sure.
outside the county. So where they've had these ADRC offices set up in other counties, those have been a real plus to the senior citizens. That part of it, they generally are very pleased with.
Yeah.
There'll be a little different management. There'll be a lot of nurses involved in the care through the care district.
Okay.
So that you'll have both a social worker and a nurse assigned to your case to kind of make sure they're meeting the objectives that you have, that you want to meet, and that they're taking in consideration both what your needs and wants are. But they do have to manage that whole district within that amount of money they're allotted by the state.
Wow.
And each year
a
that
huge
per
challenge.
capita amount changes, yeah.
That's a huge challenge, and especially as people's budgets become less and less money to work with, you know. So I mean, as all of our money is stretched further and further, services like that and others that the county provides are becoming more and more taxed. Not taxed in monetary sense where it shows up on your tax bill, but they're being tried more and more, they're being used more and more.
Well, there's a steady trend of the county being supported more and more by the tax levy because other sources of revenue have not kept pace. We did get a cut in revenue sharing for this budget from the state. Our interest income is down. Our reserves are doing well in terms of dollar amount invested, but the return on those reserves has gotten much smaller, and that's a significant shrinkage of revenue. Things like fees we get from the Register of Deeds office for recording real estate transfers or new permits for building homes through the Planning and Zoning Department, those are all under pressure.
Yeah.
So lots of revenues are under pressure. So even though we're having this budget that's actually shrinking, the amount of tax levy we need to operate the county is still inching up a little bit.
Yeah, and the thing that doesn't shrink ever, in fact it grows, is the unfunded mandates.
Yes, I mean,
You know, they just keep adding on more and more and more stuff.
yeah, and many of the things are good things that you support. I mean, the state may require us to do something, but something we would like to do anyways. But if the amount of money coming with that direction to perform those functions doesn't grow over time, of course, you're gradually shifting a portion of those costs onto the tax levy.
Sure. Well, can we get into some specifics on the budget, Mark? I mean,
Sure.
what kinds of things are we looking at personnel cuts in any area?
No, the personnel will remain roughly level.
Okay.
There's a couple areas we're adding people. We're going to add a half-time person to the Veterans Office
Okay.
because the number of files they're handling is growing enormously.
Okay.
I actually think that's from two factors. One, we do have some wars going on. We're getting new veterans. But Bob Stone, the director there, has proven to be very effective at identifying benefits that people are eligible for. And as his reputation gets out there, more and more veterans are coming in to talk to him to see if he might be able to help them line up with some benefit they're entitled to. So their work has gone up, and we're adding a half-time person there. We're adding a full-time person to the clerk of courts because the volume of people coming through the court system continues to increase. We're adding, I think, a records person in the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And some of the things we're adding have grants behind them, but those grants don't always last forever.
Right.
Other things are designed to reduce overtime, because sometimes if you see that there's an area where the amount of overtime is excessive, you either have to figure out a way to do it with less personnel, or perhaps adding someone and paying them straight time is better than the time and a half. But overall, I think there's a decrease in the human service area. And there'll actually be big decreases in the number of people with the human service area over the next 4 years, as some of our employees will be initially leased to this family care district.
Okay.
And then eventually they will have the opportunity to become employees of the family care district rather than being employees of the county.
Okay.
So we'll probably see a 15 to 20 person reduction over the next 4 years in that area.
Okay. Now, what about services? Are we seeing any kinds of services cut, or like we've seen with some of the staffing, increased a little bit?
Certainly the volume of people we serve keeps going up, people in the income support area of the human service. And our population is aging, so the number of people we serve continues to rise. And in some categories rises fairly rapidly in an economic downturn. Even the people we serve through the jail, and you can take those terms loosely, that population is growing as well.
Sure.
So the volume of service we're providing is going up. We have been able to preserve all of the essential services with this budget. I don't think we're cutting out any major items, but we're kind of hanging on by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, okay. Just on a separate side note here, I guess, you mentioned the jail a couple of times. There has been some talk in the last year or so about, kind of a regionalization of our jail our jail, not necessarily the sheriff's department, but the jail with Outagamie County and Calumet, and then Outagamie kind of fell off the radar map a little bit. But the talks are still going on with Calumet County, or where is that at?
Well, I think it's still going on with Outagamie as well. Outagamie
Okay.
did vote against funding the study group that was going to do a study of a joint jail project where you'd have a single jail with 3 counties participating. That's something we need to explore. I don't think that's the most likely outcome. Because the way the law is now, one sheriff has to be in charge of a jail, and it's based on where that's physically located. So we would need a change in the law, and I'm not convinced that a new freestanding facility would be less expensive than adding on to an existing one. It's not something that will happen immediately, but at some point in time, we're running low on capacity. Outagamie County is lower than us and has no room to add on. I think the most likely outcome is that you get some sort of contractual agreement between a group of counties, that one county would build a facility designed to meet their needs for at least a decade, but they would have some sort of interlocking contract with other counties to use the excess capacity. And it would probably be one of those deals where maybe Outagamie County promises to pay us for a certain number of beds, whether they use them or not, and we promise to maintain a larger number than that of beds that would be available to them when they needed them. And in fact, we have that type of arrangement for juvenile beds.
I was just going to say, much
yeah.
like the juvenile arrangement that we have with them to house our juveniles.
I think that's the most likely outcome, but we are talking about exploring a joint facility. Well, it's always good to look into a couple different possibilities, and maybe we'll be surprised and find out that one of those is going to work better. But my instincts are that one county in the end will have to build the capacity and then contract with other counties to use the excess capacity, and will guarantee a certain number of beds for a period of years. Now, you still run into the situation, though, when you do that your income is high when you first build it,
Yeah.
and that as local prisoners take up the beds, then you've got this shrinking income. We feel that now with the sheriff's department.
Sure.
And when they built the new jail, they said that it was going to meet our needs for 10 years, and all the evidence indicates they were very accurate on that
Yeah.
figure.
Yeah.
So about the time our jail is paid off, it will be completely full with, or be at a capacity. You always have to have available beds for the weekends.
Sure.
Because, you know, everyone understands why.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
have to have a capacity
Yeah.
to be able to place people on the weekends
Yeah.
that get arrested. And so you're at full capacity when you probably have a certain number of your beds filled, and that you just have that limited extra capacity in case something occurs over the weekend.
Sure.
And we'll be there about the time the jail is paid off. And then you have the difficult choice of raising money to add on to your jail, or you have to start placing some of your prisoners out of town. And the going rate on that is, you know, between $50 and $60 a bed
Yeah.
per day. So it's not cheap to place somebody out of town, and it also tends to isolate them from their relatives that may also be in town. So,
Yeah. Which doesn't help with their rehabilitation.
no.
You know.
And
Yeah,
remember,
so-
jail is not hardcore criminals. I think sometimes we kind of mix in our mind jail and prison.
Yeah.
If you're sentenced for over a year, most serious crime, the sentences are over a year, then you go to prison. It's only when your sentence is a year or less that you end up in jail, unless it's a probation hold or someone awaiting trial. I mean, there are other circumstances, but for the most part, the people in jail, they're not on the same level of wrongdoing that the people in prison are.
Right, right. So under your, you know, scenario there that we're kind of speculating about here, each county would still operate their own jail, but somewhere along the way, somebody would build another facility, and it would be separate. There would still be 3 jails, and then there would be this other facility that would be in one of the 3 counties.
Right. It could
And-
even be in addition to one of the existing
Okay,
jails,
all right.
although certainly Outagamie County doesn't have space for that.
No, no.
But, and basically what the contract with the other counties would do would be ensure that there'd be cash flow to service the debt for that expansion. So, you know, basically you would arrange it so that your lease beds covered the cost of your expansion as you were slowly filling it with your own prisoners. Hopefully
Sure.
you'd have it paid off by the time that period was up.
Sure. Okay. Anything else in the budget? I know we just really touched very briefly on it, but is there anything else in the budget that you thought viewers should know about?
Sure, there's some good things in here. The airport is completely off the levy.
Okay.
And that's largely a result of all the Oshkosh Corp vehicles being stored there. They're manufactured by Oshkosh Corp. The federal government has bought those vehicles, but not taken delivery. So the federal government pays us $1.50 per vehicle per day. And that has allowed us to completely take the airport off the levy. That will be true certainly for 2010 and perhaps for 2011.
Okay.
But at some point in time, those vehicles will be gone, and there'll be a need for other revenues again. But
Right.
at least for 2 years, the airport is completely independent of the tax levy.
Okay.
The nursing home, there was a huge lobbying effort by counties on the state before this last budget. And this is complicated, but the federal government gives the state additional monies to compensate counties for what they call nursing home losses. What they're really referring to is the tax levy put into the nursing homes. The state keeps half of that money for other Medicaid eligible programs. Good programs, but not really what the money was intended for. For instance, Badger Care, Senior Care, things like that. And if more money comes in from the federal government than what was budgeted, the state was going to say, well, any excess was theirs. We successfully argued that any excess of that amount should stay with the county nursing homes, because county nursing homes are closing left and right.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, 4 counties had referendums on their nursing homes. And 2 of them, the referendums were supported to put additional levy in to keep the nursing homes open. In 2 counties, they were turned down, and those nursing homes will be sold or closed.
Wow. Which of the 2 counties do you know offhand?
You know, I'll get it wrong if I
Okay,
guess.
don't even venture.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna try.
Don't even venture a guess.
But the point is that we were able to persuade the state that, you know, they're taking half of this reimbursement for the federal government for these losses. If in fact these nursing homes keep closing, you know, that's the goose that lays the golden egg
Yeah.
in terms of financing those other programs. The amount of money that the state's divvying up will start shrinking, and they'll have less money for Badger Care and senior care.
Right.
So we successfully persuaded them that it was in their best interest to be more generous with the nursing homes, so that more counties would keep their nursing homes open. So more revenue coming into Parkview Health Center than we would have expected, and that was a good thing. I think I mentioned the Oshkosh Corp vehicles. Family care is allowing us to shift some expenses away from the county, and those are all good news. There is a little piece of bad news.
Okay,
And
lay it on us.
I'm working on getting this amended, but the counties have a lot of different limitations on us. We have this levy freeze we talked about, and in the simplest form, you get the greater of the new construction level you have, or some base amount, and for the current year and for next year, that's 3%.
Okay.
That's what you can take on the levy. You can take the greater of those two. New construction is very slow now, 1.5% for the county, so that the 3% is the greater number. But there's an old limitation out there still on the books, the rate limits. And basically, it was a law they threw in '93, and they said no county can ever exceed the equalized tax rate they had in 1992. That hasn't posed a big problem for us while our tax base is growing.
But now it might.
Well, now you've got half of the counties with negative changes in their equalized tax base. Their bases are shrinking. Another half that have between 0 and 3% increase, and only 3 counties above 3%. What that means is if the counties were to take this floor amount that the levy freeze says they can take, their rates have to start moving up.
Yeah.
Especially if, well, imagine you had a completely flat property valuation for the county. Then if you were going to increase your levy by 3%, that would all have to come out of the rate. So we're starting to see those rates move up, and that's one of the reasons Winnebago County is staying below the 3%. Because if we took the full 3%, we would probably run out of rate limit by the time we were doing the 2012 budget.
Okay.
There would just be no room left to raise the levy. And in fact, if property valuations went down enough, the tax levy would actually have to shrink to prevent the rate from rising. Because if you get negative numbers, the rate has to go up just to keep the levy flat. So there is this second limitation on us. I don't really think the legislators intended to have both of these in effect, and I'm hoping that they'll take a close look at this and decide that having the two separate limitations is superfluous, and that the levy freeze is sufficient to control the growth in property taxes. I say this at a little bit of risk because I know people don't think this way, but property taxes in Wisconsin, according to the Taxpayers Alliance, have traditionally been between 4 and 6% of income. Now, this is on average for everyone. Obviously, individuals will fall all over the place. But right now, they're about 4.6% of income. And what that means is that property taxes in the state are at the low end of their normal range, and in fact have been trending down as a percentage of income since about 1970. It doesn't always feel like that to those of us on the ground, and especially doesn't feel like that to people whose incomes haven't been growing with the average.
Right.
But in truth, property taxes have come down quite a bit since 1970 as a percentage of income for the average individual. Obviously not for everybody.
Right. We're running down to about 4.5 minutes now, and I want to touch on a couple things here. You mentioned the airport, and just in the last week or two from when we're taping this, there was an article in the paper about the airport. And, as usual, when there's an article about the airport, somebody makes comments about, basically that the airport is a dog because there's no commercial airline in and out of there. And, I know the Northwestern has done stories on this. We've certainly brought it up a number of times on this show, both with you, with county board members, with the airport director himself. The airport is not a drain on anyone's budget just because we don't have you know, a commercial airline coming in and out of there. I mean, there are lots of things going on out there
Oh, yes.
that's producing a lot of revenue and hundreds of jobs. Yes?
And there's also a lot of charter flights in and out of there. You know, there isn't the commercial aviation,
Right.
but there's a lot of movement of smaller, you know, private jets and small aircraft in and out of the airport. For instance, the sales force for Oshkosh Corporation, I believe they operate 2 planes or 2 jets out of the airport, and they're in and out of there constantly. Basileer, that converts the aircrafts and sells them mostly to
Oh,
South
Basileer,
America.
yep.
Basileer. They're always testing aircraft and flying them out there. There's a flight school at the tech school. So there's a lot more going there than people realize. There's a business that polishes aircraft windshields, and people fly in from all over to get their windshields repaired.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot more going on there than people realize.
Well, and you know, we've got to get away from this mentality that the airport is there to serve one purpose and one purpose only, and that's a week-long convention and fly-in for EAA. Yes, it does that, but there's a lot other stuff going on 51 weeks of the year when EAA is not happening out there.
Now that doesn't mean that we wouldn't like to have a lot more.
Absolutely.
We would like to develop aircraft-related industry around the airport. And as much as we've struggled to do that, the progress is real slow, but it definitely has the potential. And if someone makes a private aircraft, like a sport aircraft, what would be a better place to have it than where they have the largest gathering of private pilots in the world?
Absolutely. Want to just touch on this before we let you go too. You have recently, and I want to make sure I get this right, you've been chosen you've been elected as president of the Wisconsin County Executives and Administrators Association at their statewide meeting or conference last month. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now you've been involved with them on a slightly lesser level in the past, but now you're the president.
I have been serving as the vice president for the past 2 years.
What is this? What additional duties do you have now?
Well, if members request that I make contacts with, you know, the governor or the legislature on issues essential to the counties, that's something that I'll do. Help organize meetings where we can discuss what issues we're facing. Typically, the Wisconsin Counties Association is a guest at those meetings and presents us with pending legislation, you know, both opportunities and threats.
Sure.
And basically, I think we end up being a lobbying group for the financial interests of counties.
Okay. All right. Well, congratulations again on that. You know, I think that that's a credit to you and certainly to the county as well that they elected you president.
Thank you.
It's a vote of confidence for you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, there were some other things that I had on my list to touch on, but we just don't have time. But it's good news on the budget, and we appreciate your hard work with that. How many pages is this?
Oh, it's over 400.
It's a quite a lengthy document that you put together every year. So
the pictures on the cover are great, but if you read this thing, it goes downhill from there.
All righty then. On that happy note, I will just say thanks for being here, and it's always a pleasure having you. So
thank you for
thanks
having me
again.
on.
And that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.